Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to give you 8 tips that I believe will make you better at playing possession Tiki Taka. Now before I start, as you can see, I'm back onto the centre forward instead of the striker. Just know that the player instructions from my custom tactics video are the exact same for that centre forward, and the only thing that's changed from that tactics video is I now play on the pressure on heavy touch instead of the pressure after possession loss. I'm going to just hop into a squad battles match and show you the tips that I use. So, to start it off with, the tip number 1 is probably the most useful. It's directional runs. Now, as you can see, using the L1 button on the controller, I'm sorry I don't know the ones for the Xbox, when I tap that button, Roberto Carlos runs forward. So, using the L1 button, it puts them what I call a directional run, which means that your player starts running up forward. So I just did it again there, and I'll do it again here. So as you can see, he goes running forward. This is ridiculously helpful, because when you're in a situation like this, let's say you're on the wing and you want to get the quick pass back, you can set him on a directional and find that open space. Another thing you can do is, just if you point your controller, wherever the triangle's, at a player, let's say Patrick Vieira here, and you press the directional button, he'll run forward. Do it again here with Ramos, and he runs forward when I press the L1 button. So directional runs are very, very useful. So when I'm on the wing here, if I use a directional run, it's going to help Roberto Carlos get past that player. Very, very helpful. Another one is R1 passing, so the button directly across. When you do normal passing, this is mostly for when you're around the back. As you can see, the passing is slow. Maybe I'm trying to switch the play. As you can see, the passing is really, really slow. If you press the R1 button, you'll see the pass is a lot quicker and much firmer, so that it's much easier to play out the back from. But as you can see there, it is very, very easy to give it away, which is why I definitely recommend that you should only be playing it around the back when you use it, so it's very easy to play quicker from the back. Now, I don't really recommend it when you're around here on the field because firm passes can get away from the players. So I only really recommend it when you're around your back four, so you can quickly hit firm passes across the field. Because if you don't press that button, as you can see, it's very slow as opposed to this. So it's much, much easier. So those are the two main tips. The next one is the double press. So if you don't know, using that same button we just used to do the passing, if you press R1, or hold it I should say, they pressure a player forward. But if you double tap it, it'll use 2 players and they'll actually go mark the closest players. So I can see Anthony and Xavi Alonso are marking those 2 players. So if I'll show you again, you see how 2 players with the blue triangles are marking the closest opponents. This is very useful when defending because, as you know, both your fullbacks go forward, making your defense very vulnerable because you only have your CDM and your centre backs. So, using the double press, it's going to mark the 2 closest opponents. I don't recommend doing this when you're pressing up front, but as you can see, if I use it, the player is marking the man in the middle for the cutback. Now, it's much, much easier than pressure because the pressure is used to put a player to go win the ball back, whilst if you double tap it, it's going to be used to mark your opponent's closest players. But if you just saw in that example, players were actually running upwards on the field instead of helping on the defence because they were going to go mark the closest player. So it's not very usable in areas like that, but it is very, very helpful in defending cutbacks, which is why I definitely recommend it, and if you want to mark players closer. Next tip is where to actually play your Tiki Taka. Now, if you play on a formation that has a fullback, you want to stay neutral, playing on the wings as well as down the middle. But if you play on a formation, if you're playing someone with a formation like the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow or the 3-5-2, any sort of 3-back formations, not a 5-back, and they have open wings with no winger, with only one player on the wing, whether that be just a fullback and no winger, or no fullback and a winger. Either way, if there's only one player on the wing, dominate that. Because as you know, when you're up on the field and your fullbacks are going forward, you've got 2 players there. I've got my right winger and my right back making runs up the field. So that is very, very helpful. That's why most of your play would most likely be on the wings. And if they're starting to see that more often, if they start marking players on the wing, then you can just go down the middle. So that's very helpful in that term. Next tip, players to pass around with. So let's go over the main ones. Anthony, Roberto Carlos, and Carlos Soler. That's a good triangle across your wing. You can pass it from Roberto Carlos, put him on a directional, give it to Soler, and then you got your two players up front. Same on this side. And then you got Mascherano, Vieira, and Ramos to pass it around with, as well as Soler and Alonso and Kiel. So you can go down the middle as well. So if I show you an example here, if I pass it out to the fullback, you can see that Xavi Alonso's there, as well as Alanga. That's a good triangle. If I'm down the middle here with Mascherano, as you can see, I have myself my two centre mids that I can pass it around. So that is very helpful as well. The next tip I have is play slow. It is a slow build-up formation. The slower you play, the less chances your opponent has and the more frustrated they are likely to become. So, take your time. Find the open man to pass to. That's my next tip. Because that's what you're all about. You've got to play slow. You've got to play quick, simple football in some areas and slow build-up in others. That is my main tips for you. So, hopefully this helped you out a little. If it didn't and you have any other questions, just put it in the comment section and I'll probably reply to you. So that's my tips and tricks on how to get better at playing Tiki Taka. So just to go over them really quickly, directional runs, press L1 and they'll go on a run, or aim it at the person and they'll go on the run as well. R1 passing helps you to hit firm passes, but I only recommend it around the back. If they have vulnerable wings, like the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow or the 3-5-2 for example, play along the wing, because you're going to have two players there all the time. Pass around with your triangles, so like I said, Anthony, Soler, Roberto Carlos, Alanga, Alonso, Mateus, two triangles, Soler, Mascherano, Alonso, Kiel, you know what I mean. Pass slow, so take your time, and that's my tips. Hope they helped you out. If they didn't, just leave me a comment and I'll most likely reply to it. Thank you very much.